This whole thing's crazy right here. Lucky his little gang buddy turned the camera. Didn't work out this time. What's crazy is the car's already parked, so why don't they just write him a ticket? Why do they have to tow the car? Oh, because they're dick bags. These are the losers we employ. He was arrested on several drug charges. Why wasn't the cop charged? Clearly was carrying these drugs around before the arrest. Just out looking for some minorities with past drug charges. So this is part of that video. This is kind of the outcome. NAACP will press case against new London police officer. The organization says it continued to meet with the U.S. Attorney's Office to seek criminal charges against Roger Newton. It's sad that we have to fight this hard to get criminals charged just because they're in that gang. They don't get charged like everybody else would. Representatives of the local chapter of the NAACP say they will continue to press for criminal charges or a criminal case against a London police officer accused of planting drugs. Well, there's just so many things wrong here. A, if he planted the drugs, that means he had the drugs before he was even on the scene. So he was just carrying drugs around, waiting for the unlucky person to get planted on. Unless he was planning on somehow jamming up just this one dude, which I highly doubt. This cop was, so he was carrying drugs around. That's a charge all on its own. Never mind planting him and arresting this dude for it. At a press conference held Wednesday afternoon, NAACP officials said they were dissatisfied that the U.S. Attorney's Office chose not to consider prosecuting Roger Newton. Well, who wouldn't be dissatisfied? I mean, if it was anybody that's not a public servant or a clown in a costume, they would have absolutely been charged. So why wasn't this guy? A former member of New London Police Department, Tamara K. Lanner, criminal justice chair with the Connecticut NAACP, said the organization is continuing discussions with the U.S. Attorney's Office. I am optimistic that when we talk about these things and take another look, they'll see the concerns we have said. New London resident Lance Good, accused of Newton of planting a plastic bag containing pills at an October 2010 traffic stop. Good also acquired a cruiser cam video of the stop, which he said appears to show Newton placing the drugs at the scene. Newton later resigned from the NLPD. Laner previously said that the decision of criminal justice officials with the U.S. Attorney's Office was based in part of their concerns with Good's credibility. Good has been convicted of felony narcotics possession 4 times between 2007 and 2011. So I wonder if they were all staged or if it was just this one and they were trying to add a fifth one. Either which way, I don't. This dude could do whatever. If he's doing it, that's one thing, but to have him plan it is another thing. Good said Wednesday that he did not think his criminal record should influence the U.S. Attorney's decision, which it absolutely should not, because what's that matter if he's been in trouble or not? Um, that just shows how they're using the system and his record against him. Oh, well, he's already got 4 of these charges, so they won't even question this. Let me throw this bag of pills right here. Like, these are the losers. This is how these people think. In all fairness, me being convicted felon has nothing to do with that video. And he is a 1,000% right. It's sad that he even has to say that. Good had sued the city and a number of NLPD officers, including Newton, in relation to the 2010 incident, as well as accusations of excessive force and an earlier arrest. He said he feels he has been harassed by police and that he is employed and volunteers as a language tutor. How can this man purely get away with something when there's evidence saying you did it? Said Good. Well, I'll tell you how good, because he's a part of a gang, and that gang is um, pretty much all our public officials. And it doesn't matter what you have on them. They could literally do this right in front of a judge, and they would still be like, "Oh, well, it's not that big of a deal," or deny it. You know what I mean? Joe Wilson, president of the New London chapter of the NAACP, said incidents of police misconduct occurred disproportionately against women and minorities. He said the organization will urge state and federal officials to take action against cases of alleged racial profiling or inappropriate actions. It's a tragedy when you have police force conducting and condoning this type of behavior, which they still do to this day. Said Wilson, we want people to know that this is going on. We want people to file complaints. Absolutely. Um, this is pathetic. This is pathetic. And the police department and the union and the chief, they still refuse to hold their officers accountable. They do condone this stuff 1,000%. And here we have another lawsuit, including Newton, and other cops. When 2 black brothers were pulled over by a cop in the city of New London, officer frisked them both, allegedly touching their genitals and their buttocks. When one of them protested and turned around during the pat-down, he was arrested for interfering with the police. So he was being molested by a cop, and for pretty much protesting being molested by this cop, they arrested him. This is what they do. That's crazy. Let me literally sexually assault you with no cause. And if you say anything, I'm going to arrest you. That's pathetic. Now, 4 years later, after that October 2011 traffic stop, U.S. District Judge Janet C. Hall has ruled that there is enough evidence to go to trial on the allegations that what happened to Donald Gilbert, the driver of the vehicle pulled over by Roger Newton, and Andre Gilbert, the passenger in his brother's vehicle, were part of policy by New London Police to arbitrarily stop motor vehicles and arbitrarily arrest people. Hall found that the 2 brothers' case could survive summary judgment because they have produced evidence of several New London residents complaining of how they were treated by police during traffic stops and that their cars were searched without any justifiable legal reason. Newton is also being sued individually. Good. Donald Gilbert complained that Newton had touched him inappropriately during a traffic stop in 2010, almost a year and a half before his brother, and he pulled over and allegedly molested by Newton. So, like I said, molested. Another man also alleged that a different officer, when stopping him while he was driving in New London in 2014, put his hand underneath my crotch and squeezed my testicles. If anybody else did that, they would be a sex offender for the rest of their life. They would have all these charges and blah. See, cops don't discriminate. Like normal people, like criminals, regular criminals don't usually like pedophiles. Like in jail, pedophiles are looked down upon and blah. These police don't care what you do. It doesn't matter. They'll accept you. Pedophiles, sexual offenders. If you're part of the gang, you're part of the gang. They don't really care. The plaintiffs also argued that the video of the stop by the 2 Gilbert brothers, has been used by state prosecutors to train the police officers in New London. how not to do pat downs. A reasonable jury could find that the New London was deliberately indifferent to its officers' practice of making traffic stops without reasonable suspicion of any wrongdoing. Following traffic stops with overzealous, to put it gently, pat-down searches and searching citizens' cars without a legal basis for doing so, Hall said. So it sounds like Willimantic to me. The issue of law enforcement stops minorities without reasonable suspicion. Sounds like Willimantic. And arresting them, Willimantic, without probable cause. Willimantic has come into the national limelight after the U.S. Department of Justice found that racial bias was endemic in how the Ferguson Police Department in Missouri treated black residents. The issue previously arose in Connecticut, where East Haven police were accused of profiling Latino drivers for traffic stops and subsequent errands. Those allegations led to federal investigations, criminal prosecutions, and civil lawsuits. In Newton's affidavit filed with the police department about the stop in 2010, he stated he had been sitting in his parked car. He stated he had been sitting in his parked car talking on his cell phone, but Newton had him step out of the car to be frisked and patted me down twice, sticking his fingers in my ass. I do not believe that the officer had the right to violate me. And let's hear what this loser has to say. New London Captain Steve Crowley said that Newton had gone over the line in 2010 incident, even though Newton said he thought Gilbert might be involved in drug dealing. If Gilbert had consented to initial actions, he clearly had made his feelings well known during the pat down, which again he was arrested for, that he was not comfortable being touched by Newton, Crowley concluded. So they're basically just molesting people because they can. In an interview, Newton's counsel, Elliot B. Spector of Hassett and George, said that his client recognized as Gilbert as a well-known drug dealers, the Gilberts as well-known drug dealers, and that it is known that people can conceal near their private parts. Well, what's that have to do with anything? Even if that's a known thing, that doesn't mean they were doing it at that moment. And just because they know people hide things there, it doesn't mean they could just reach down and molest people. As we can see, when the case goes to jury, it will be an issue of whether it was reasonable for Newton to conduct the pat-downs on Gilbert in the way he did. Spector said, and whether it was reasonable will be left to an issue of credibility, he said. And this is the same officer that got caught planting drugs. The plaintiffs also showed that the New London deputy police chief, when reviewing another man's complaint against Newton, said the enforcement of seemingly minor motor vehicle offenses is a proven tool in efforts to curb crime and drug trafficking. That's crazy. New London officials acknowledged providing training to Newton about the legal basis for using force, stopping motor vehicles, and search and seizure. They don't train these dudes that well. I mean, look at Burgesson. He's hurt numerous people now, doesn't know basic laws, and he's a lieutenant. I mean, after the third citizen he hurt for no reason and busted the dude's head open, within 4 months they promoted him from sergeant to lieutenant. What's that say? The London officials acknowledged providing training to Newton about the legal basis for using force. The city said it had no knowledge that there was any practice by its police officers of conducting arbitrary motor vehicle stops or arbitrary arresting people without probable cause. That's a lie. Hall also said that the plaintiffs are entitled to damages if they can prove at trial that their state constitutional rights to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures and to not be arrested unless clearly warranted by law were violated. The federal judge rejected a ruling by the Connecticut Appellate Court that only egregious violations of people's rights under the state constitution are compensable. She noted that federal judges in Connecticut have been different minds on whether the Connecticut Supreme Court 1998 ruling in Bennett v. Sabo means that citizens can sue for money damages every time their rights to be free of unreasonable searches and seizures are illegal, arrests are violated. Hall predicted that the Connecticut Supreme Court would rule that the constitutional violations give rise to a private cause of action. Whether offending conduct is egregious or merely unreasonable, discovery has closed the case, and the judge said that the Gilbert's counsel did not produce enough evidence that they were being racially profiled or that the police department intentionally discriminates against minors. Spector said that there was no evidence of discriminatory motivation by his client, and he is gratified that claim was dismissed. Newton has moved out of the state and is longer with the police department. Moved out of the state and is, there's probably supposed to be a no in there, no longer with the police department. Well, I'd hope not after he got caught planting drugs on somebody. The brother who was arrested by Newton with interfering with an officer had that charge nollied. Why would he nollie it? See, there's no problem with people. Oh, I'll take the nollie. No, get it dismissed. John W. Canavino Jr. and Jonathan Z. Zellner of Ryan DeLuca in Stanford are representing the city. Calvino declined the comment. The Gilberts are being represented by Conrad O. Seifert and Seifert Hogan Online. Declined to comment.